Alright, we should be live. We are back. We are working on Daretti, Rocketeer Engineer. Here he is in case you haven't seen him. He is from Aether Drift, and at this point, there's a huge chunk of the spoilers out already, and we're closing in on the full list being up in a few days, So yeah, we're just about there. Pre-release is next weekend, So yeah, Daretti's all about putting expensive artifacts into play by reanimating them from your graveyard, and then he gets a huge power boost. And we are at 91 spells for Daretti, and we need to get that down to 60. So we still need 31 cuts, and given how long it takes for me to make cuts at lower numbers, we might have a couple more streams left in us before we're done here. I'm hoping it's less than 3, but I'm not super optimistic if I'm being completely honest with everybody. Alright, let's get to it before I start getting that eye strain thing that makes me super tired, that makes me start to get super rambly and have my mind wander off every 10 seconds. See, we're almost definitely keeping Mana Vault, Nevinral's Disc, Soul Ring, do good. Workshop for the people that have it or don't have or can use proxies. If you don't have Workshop, do not worry about it. I'll say it again when we're doing the cleanup for the deck. Workshop is not necessary. It's an enabler. It makes the deck go faster. It is not needed. If your playgroup doesn't allow proxies and doesn't have people with this kind of power level in it anyway, then you're just not going to randomly stomp your friends that one game where you drew Workshop early. That's all there is to it. Mind Stone, Scroll Rack. Need cards like Gamble, Worn Power Stone, Goblin Welder. We need ways to both find the cards we need and get the cards we need in the graveyard into the graveyard. Maybe we don't need Memory Jar. Memory Jar is fine. It's a decent thing to recur with our commander. We get to draw a bunch of cards, and then the expensive artifacts that we can't cast just get discarded, which is where we want them to go anyway. So that's not bad. But we don't really have any ways to punish opponents for drawing all the extra cards, or to benefit us from them drawing extra cards. So it's a little dicey if they have things with flash, instant speed spells of any kind, actual instance, that sort of thing. So cards that can discard for value, or anything that benefits them from drawing extra cards, discarding cards, or opponents doing the same. Yeah, we probably don't actually need Memory Jar, and it's just another $100+ card on the list, I think, so might as well get rid of it. That way the people that don't have the cards and don't do proxies have one less thing that they need to jam into their... They need to find a replacement for to jam into their deck. Let Daretti peek over the top. Hey Daretti, how's it going? It's not a terrible card in this deck. Like I said, we draw a bunch of extra cards, we get to play what we can out of our hand, and then we discard, ideally, the expensive artifacts that we couldn't cast anyway, and now they're in the graveyard for Daretti. But even if we don't hit that, we're digging deeper to them, so it should still be fine. It also makes cards like Gamble and Reckless Handling slightly better, because if we draw them off of the jar, we can tutor for the card and know that we're going to discard it at some point in time during our turn. Anger, Aggravated Assault. Maybe Aggravated Assault isn't good enough. It gives us an extra combat step with Daretti, so that we can attack with him again and get another trigger. It also Lets us attack with anything that we put into play off of Daretti if it has haste. So, in situations where Anger's in the graveyard, although I think Anger is the only one we can do mid combat. Because Aggravated Assault still gives us the second main phase, right? Okay, now that we're actually typing in the thing. Untap all creatures you control. If it's a main phase, there's an additional combat phase followed by an additional main phase. Okay, so yeah, we just activate it during the second main phase, and we can move around like Greaves and Boots and everything. So we can still attack with anything we reanimated with Daretti. So. Or at least can potentially attack. We do still need a way to give it haste. Alright, so I guess we keep Aggravated Assault for right now. It still might go. We already cut the the Ugin's Nexus, so. Granted, that one only works the one time, but it does guarantee we get to attack with the other creatures since we get an entire turn cycle to work with. It's an extra turn. Why did I call it a turn cycle? We're skipping everybody else's turn, so there's no other turns in the turn cycle anymore. We're just going again. I don't know. I got nothing. We're keeping the Whisper Silk Cloak for right now, so that Daretti's unblockable, or one of our 9/9s is. You know, I guess Triplicate Titan doesn't matter if that one's unblockable most of the time, but the Phyrexian Triniform and, to a lesser extent, Wormcoil and Battlesphere, also nice to have them unblockable. It could still be Mycosynth Golem. I keep coming back to this one. It only affects my artifact creatures for the affinity part, so it's not like it's letting us cast, what's its name? Something like Spine of Ishtar, for example. Something that we would have to cast a whole bunch of times. Because giving that affinity for artifacts would be a huge game. The creatures, we cast them once, and then they're in play, and then they die, and then we resurrect them. Yeah, as cool as Mycosynth Golem is, like, the other big thing about Mycosynth Golem is making Daretti 11 power means that it's a lot easier to kill our opponents in 1 to 2 hits from Daretti, from commander damage. And if we get rid of this, the only other thing that's really, really letting him do that is the sword from Assassin's Creed, Excalibur. Which I still want to keep in here because I'm very amused at the idea of one-shotting people with Daretti because he brought back Excalibur of all things. But yeah, I think we can lose the Mycosynth Golem. It's definitely okay in the deck, but it's not insane. We're already bypassing the casting costs on lots of things, so we don't necessarily need. If we were trying to bypass casting costs by making things cheaper or cheating stuff into play from our hand, I would be a lot more inclined to the Golem because that would make it a lot easier to cast our other stuff if we just cheat this one in. But which is why it was on the list in the first place. But I don't think we need it. I don't think it's doing quite enough in this build. It is more entertaining for it to just get cheated into play with Daretti and make Daretti 11 power than anything else about it, I think. Because we're not cheating him into play before turn 5, and if we did cheat him into play on, like, turn 5, what are we actually doing with him? Like, he's one of the most expensive artifact creatures in the deck. There's 2 9s, which we might be able to cast at that point. Between him and maybe like 1 or 2 other artifacts that are still in play. I'm assuming that, you know, we ramp into Daretti, then we ramp into this thing from Daretti, and Like, even in the best case scenario, we're casting like a 9 drop on turn 5, maybe. Like, that might be our best. And that still needs to do a whole lot because we now have the biggest, scariest threat on the board by a wide margin in the early game, and 2 to 3 opponents who are not going to take too kindly to that. So it's neat and all that we might be able to get away with that, but I don't think that's quite the thing that I'm looking for in this deck. The upside though is that we would, if it's one of the 9/9s, it would actually die into 3 things if they don't have Path or Swords or any of the other dozens upon dozens of exile effects for an artifact creature. Wellspring into the 4, Mirrorworks. It's also possible we don't need Mirrorworks. Mirrorworks might be another win more card rather than a card that helps me win. I do have a ton of artifacts, obviously, because of Daretti. And most of them are fine as doubles. Like, there's very few redundant cards, which is why we had the Sculpting Steel on the list originally. It's probably still too good. There are too many artifacts, like I said, that aren't redundant, so making the extra copy of it would be a good thing. Conjurer's Closet. Aside from re-triggering Daretti, how many things do I have that work with Conjurer's Closet? If I come back up here, go down to 89, that Golem and Memory Jar. How many creatures do I have that work with this thing right now, besides Daretti? Goblin Welder doesn't do anything. Metal Worker, no. Anger, no. Duplicate, yes, so that's 1. Sad Robots, 2. Did we do this list already? I feel like I did something similar to this. Battlespheres 3. Actually, it might have been another card that we cut. I think it was another card that we cut where I did this. With similar cards. Can reset Revoker, but that's kind of whatever. It's not like a huge gain. Your Hulk is 4. Drop Trawler, no. Oh, it might have been the Panharmonicon. That's what it was. It was Panharmonicon. So we had just enough for Panharmonicon for the comes into play ability. I think, but just barely. Yeah, I think that's what it was. It was the Panharmonicon I was looking at things for. Because yeah, Cityscape Leveler doesn't do it. Scrap Mutt kind of does, in that we get to rummage twice. So I guess that's 5 at that point. We don't get to blink the Tunnel Grinder. We might have fewer for the Closet because we don't get the artifact triggers, so that might be it. Technically, Daretti is 6, and Daretti's the big one. Meteor Golem's 7. Engineer would be 8. Ultra Complete doesn't count. Tomb Sentinel's 9. Alright, so we have even fewer for the Conjurer's Closet than we did for um, Panharmonicon. So yeah, with less than 10% of the deck working with it, and our commander being the only one that's really decent, and even with our commander, like retriggering his thing, that's still putting it into play basically on my end step. So less potent. I'm not going to be able. I'm definitely not going to be able to do anything else with it. At least the Panharmonicon copying it, if I have ways to give my stuff haste, might be relevant. But yeah, Panharmonicon was already kind of on the fence, and Conjurer's Closet seems to be worse in the deck than even just for triggering Daretti end of turn, which is primarily what it would be doing, I believe, is just blinking Daretti while he's in play, so that way I can sack more artifacts and get more artifacts back. So it's not terrible in the deck, because we can rely on having Daretti around, but it's not amazing. Part of me wonders if I don't, if do I actually need Scrap Trawler? And then there's another part of me that's like, but it's such good value. If you sacrifice an expensive artifact to bring back another expensive artifact, you get a free cheap artifact back for sacrificing later on, or for whatever value that cheap artifact has. Just because it was cheaper than the thing I just lost doesn't mean it's not a high impact artifact that I get back in addition to getting back the one that I'm saving all the mana on casting again. Yeah, not seeing anything else yet that's like, yeah, we can definitely lose that. Like something that I was big on before, but now that we've gotten rid of other stuff and the deck's starting to take better shape, I can be like, yeah, no, maybe we don't actually need that anymore. Boots, Trading Post, Meteor Golem, Manifold Key, Goblin Engineer. Is Cauldra too underwhelming? It's a 5/5 first strike, trample, haste. And when it deals combat damage to a creature, exile it. It's nice that it's a decent sized body with indestructible. The first strike is kind of whatever when it's indestructible. It's like, does it even need that? I'm pretty sure that if that was part of Caldra's thing, it's just left over. Like the sword gives first strike and trample, and the shield gives indestructible. Pretty sure the helm was what gave haste. Or maybe the helm gave first strike, trample, and haste, and the sword gave the +5/+5, and the deals damage, exile the creature. With indestructible, the first strike seems kind of there's such a small corner case where the thing living long enough to deal combat damage to the Cauldron complete would even matter. Like, it's a 7-drop artifact for making Daretti 7 power while also getting a decent sized body with keyword soup all over it into play. It's probably one of the lowest impact, like, high casting cost artifacts still on the list. I don't want to cut too many things like that, otherwise we start running out of actual stuff to hit with our commander. But yeah, it might actually be one of the weakest things still available to him. Now we've cut some of the rest of the bottom fodder for that type of effect. I do wonder if we can cut Chaos Warp. So the biggest problem with cutting Chaos Warp is that it's an instant, and it can deal with any permanent type. So having Chaos Warp available to break up a combo in the middle of it, um, especially if it involves like an enchantment, or it doesn't matter if the creature dies or the artifact dies. Although if it doesn't matter, then I guess Chaos Warp isn't helping either. It does shuffle it back in though, because you can hit the same thing, right? Not forgetting how Chaos Warp works. Let me just double check, make sure I haven't forgotten how Chaos Warp works. Are we? No? No, gather. Not gonna be helpful. Okay, cool. Thanks. That gonna be slow too, because we're already being unhelpful. So, Gather is experiencing unexpected server error. Thanks, Gatherer. Thanks. You're the best. All right, we're gonna try like one more time, real quick. You're not helping. My slightly off center typing is also not helping. Alright, I'm gonna type in the words Chaos Warp and hit enter, and yep, okay. We're just being super extra unhelpful right now. Okay. Alright. Does shuffle it back in, so it does work on things that don't care about randomly dying. That one, yeah. Okay. I saw Wizards Play Network, and I'm like, there's a promo for this, and then I remembered what it looked like. Vaguely. We have that one where the raccoon's falling through the portal. Anyway. So yeah, Chaos Warp is good for breaking up game-winning combos in the middle of it. Usually, not always. You know, sometimes it does hit a replacement part for it or the same part, and sometimes what it gives you might still technically be good enough, even if it wasn't like full on a substitute for what you just got rid of. Like, okay, I don't win with that now, but this is still good enough, I guess. So, and then sometimes it just hits a thing like, you know, an instant or a sorcery, and it stays where it is, or a land or something, and it's like, okay, that's amazing. 3 mana, kill your thing, give you nothing in return. Red. The biggest problem is that I have so many other bits of interaction that are artifacts and therefore work with the deck and what the deck is trying to do anyway, that Chaos Warp feels redundant if it's not being used in the middle of some big thing going off in order to set it back or stop it from happening entirely. So Cauldra should be on one of the lower lists here. There's Cauldra. Should also be the jar while I'm thinking of it that we got rid of. Yeah. Same section. Oh, and Mycosynth Golem too. Alright, so we get rid of those two. Gotten rid of 4 cards so far today. It's fine. It's fine. Making progress. That's the important thing. Alright. I wonder if I need all of the big score variants now that I've gotten rid of cursed recording. Like, one of the benefits of these cards was cursed recording, being able to let me loot away one card or rummage away one card to draw like four cards was pretty strong. But now that we've gotten rid of that, do we need to go down on the number? Because it does still help that they make treasure. So that way we have treasures to sacrifice. But maybe the repeatable ones or the ones that let me discard more cards are actually better now. Collector's Vault is probably better than most of them. So is Brass's Tunnel Grinder and even the Scrapwork Mutt. Yeah, I'm wondering if I can get rid of those now and still be fine. Like, we keep the Faithless Looting because that lets me loot away four cards. Smuggler's Copter is repeatable. If we got rid of, like, Seize, it would be Seize, Unexpected Windfall, Big Score. We got rid of those three. Let's see what the list looks like after that. So, got the Seize, Windfall, Big Score. Leaves us with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So over 10% of the deck, and most of them are reusable at this point. Yeah, it's probably alright now. Does make me a little sad, because, they're all discarding cards and making artifacts. That's kind of what I wanted with the deck in the first place, but so those three are all gone. Alright. Alright, so these are our remaining, like, big, splashy reanimate targets. How many do we actually have on the list? Because if it's, like, more than 20, I probably need to cut a couple of them. I don't think it is, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Oh no! 22. So we can probably lose two more off of this list just to make room for the other stuff. So if I'm losing two cards off of this list, it's probably Combustible Gear Hulk and Hedron Archive, if I'm being honest. Like, the Hedron Archive was already in danger of going to the Mightstone and Weakstone, just because, aside from helping us cast our commander, I think the Mightstone and Weakstone are just better in the deck. Like, having the option to draw two cards while still making 2 mana, as opposed to it being 2 mana or the two cards, and not requiring an additional mana investment to get the two cards out of it. There is a slight argument to be made for cutting Dreamstone Hedron over Hedron Archive, but I would much rather buy back the Dreamstone Hedron with our commander. It's only really good when Hedron Archive is castable, where the Dreamstone Hedron wouldn't be. But yeah, I think a third or a fifth of our deck, rather, being the things that we want to reanimate, is about as good as that can reasonably get. So if we take out a couple of the medium reanimation targets, so Hedron Archive is on here a bunch of times. In fact, do that just to make sure we're getting rid of the actual Hedron Archive and not Dreamstone Hedron by mistake. Take it off the mana ramp section and combust the Gear Hulk. Alright. I think those were our two weakest. That leaves us with 20 reanimation targets left. We come down here again. We have our removal and our mana ramp. Let's see. For removal, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Wonder if we could lose Karn and Ugin here. Or if we don't lose Ugin, if we should lose, like, the Eldrazi one, All Is Dust. See, our way of dealing with problematic enchantments, because dealing with problematic artifacts is having to destroy destroy individual artifacts or exile individual permanents. You know, like we're not going to get rid of most artifacts with Ugin or All Is Dust. So, but they can deal with problematic enchantments, which Red otherwise struggles with. But we do still have Disc and O Stone, although they get a lot worse if we don't have Darksteel Forge out. But we'll do what we have to. Cityscape Leveler, Meteor Golem, Chaos Warp, Optic, Sentinel, Doom Sentinel, yep. The problem is if I got rid of Karn and Ugin, that would only leave original Daretti, and at that point it's really super tempting to try and jam the Immortal Sun into the deck. Then again, I don't know that my creatures need the +1/+1, so it's mostly the card draw and the disruption to opponents' things. I do feel like we have room in the removal department to lose a couple cards and still be fine. Like, both Ugin and All Is Dust leave behind our artifacts, so... And they both destroy a lot of our other stuff, most likely. Like, we do have more of a decision with Ugin on what gets killed, unless, you know, we kind of have to kill other stuff. But that's still, like, a call we get to make. But the The All Is Dust can help with things that are out of range of Ugin, really big, expensive cards. Because Ugin can't actually kill an 8-drop enchantment or creature by himself. Boom. Because we might be able to get rid of the Karn and just have things like the Cityscape Leveler, and that would be fine. I could also see leaving the Karn in and just getting rid of Ugin, because Karn is better at getting rid of the one specific card that's giving me trouble without necessarily disrupting my board state. But I can see getting rid of both of the Planeswalkers, and we don't necessarily need the Immortal Sun. Like, it's neat that it works better in our deck now, but the card draw is the only thing that's really doing it for me. The +1/+1 to our team, we're not going wide that often. I think it lets you pay like one less for a spell for all of your spells, but that's still not helping us like double spell in a turn cycle as much as you would want it to for your 6-drop. Okay, what if we got rid of Ugin and Karn then? Oops. Not Iggy. Ugin. Ugin. Oh, right, the Labyrinth. Rid of Karn. Zendikar, Karn. So down to 80 now. This continues to be made. And that gets rid of 2 non-artifact pieces of removal, so we still have all of our artifacts that can interact with everything that's going on. Really. And we still have ways to get rid of things that would stop our artifacts coming into play triggering, so not as many as I would like, honestly. If it's going to be something along the lines of Torpor Orb. Like, getting rid of Norn is not that hard, but the colorless ones like Torpor Orb would actually be a bit frustrating. Okay, that does not appear on the preview window, so thank you, Norton, for giving me a valuation of my computer right now at this exact moment. They're so helpful. That just leaves our ramp as the last list. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 17 cards that fall into the category of ramp. So we probably have a few too many on this list. Going to get rid of some of them. What are the worst ones on the list? I could see it being Coalition Relic. It costs more than the other like early ones that provide a mana, and it only provides a second mana every other turn. And we don't have any fun charge counter shenanigans we can be randomly doing. Yeah, I can see it being Coalition Relic as one of the ones to go. Maybe the Mind Stone. Or possibly Arcane Signet. I guess Felwar Stone goes before Arcane Signet does, because Arcane Signet always taps for red mana. So, yeah, maybe it's the Felwar Stone then. Goes. I don't want to cut too many cheap mana producing artifacts, but I think we get more value out of Liquid Metal Torque than we do from any of the ones that don't guaranteed tap for red mana. Possible we also lose the Mind Stone. We have Dreamstone Hedron and Might Stone and Weak Stone for card draw. And while it's not a great ramp card compared to, like, neither of those are great ramp cards compared to it if we don't already have Daretti out. They still provide mana later on if I cheat them into play with him. But yeah, I don't want to go too low on cheap mana rocks. Otherwise, we start diminishing the power. It's also possible it's the Celestis, but that has at least one built-in loot from the activation, if not two, because a lot of times, somewhere during the turn cycle, an opponent is going to cast two spells. More often than not, like, somebody will have a hand that can do that, starting on, like, turn 4 or 5. So, it's very unlikely that we don't get a second loot before it gets back around to our turn. Yeah, I think I want to keep the Celestis because it has too much of an intersection. Being an artifact that I can cash in with Daretti, technically ramping me, and being a way to loot away the better artifacts. Like, all of that kind of comes together. I don't know if it's a better or worse or kind of neutral. Um, the Collector's Vault at that point. And maybe the Mind Stone also goes. And I think that's good enough for right now. I think that gets rid of some of the less impactful artifacts, because we still have Soul Ring and Mana Vault and Chalice and Arcane Signet, Liquid Metal Torque. Like, all of these are cheap enough to get down to help me ramp. Yeah, very similar to the Celestis. I think the Screwdriver is giving us too many useful options in addition to being a 3 mana rock at that point. Yeah, okay. Let's get rid of these. So we have Mind Stone. One. Coalition Relic is 2. Then we go back up to the top and grab the Felwar Stone. Is 3. Alright, we made a bunch of progress, but that's because we cut out redundant stuff from all of our sublists. So, that's going to make these last 17 cuts pretty brutal. Because now we've cut the redundancy, which is one of the spots where we had the most room to cut things. Everything else we cut is probably either going to be something else that was off of one of those lists, or it's going to be something that doesn't really have a good replacement once we've cut it. Yeah, Mindslaver is just too powerful if we can recur it multiple times. Crucible, maybe? Crucible was on here originally because we had a bunch of you know, discard effects. So this way we could discard land and then play the land, but maybe Crucible is just not good enough anymore. I think Crucible is hanging out on this list primarily for cards that aren't on the list anymore, or strategies that we've kind of gotten away from. It'd be nice if there were a whole bunch more cards like that, but I'm not holding out hope right now. Definitely want the Wellsprings, Spine, Faithless Looting. Opter should still have enough things. Panharmonicon might still be able to go. It does work with our commander and does trade in with him, though. And unlike the Closet, we can get the double triggers for Daretti coming in and sacrifice the Panharmonicon immediately, whereas with the Closet, the only way we can use the Closet for Daretti is if we. I mean, we can always use it. We can always just sacrifice it and not have it in play, but if we want to get the effect and um, cash it in with Daretti in a single turn cycle, then we have to do it during our own end step. Which seems not amazing. Shiva the Tigress, welcome back. How are you doing today? Get rid of the Crucible. Not too bad, all things considered. Still kind of want to keep the Scrap Trawler. Is Embercleave not good enough anymore? We have Excalibur. We have actual Excalibur. Do we lose the Embercleave? Like giving Daretti. The problem is it's not just giving Daretti double strike and trample. It's giving like the 9/9s, making them 10/10 double strike tramplers is a lot more problematic for the opponent. So yeah, I think I still want to leave in Embercleave. Double striking, Death Touch, trample, Lifelink, Wormcoil Engine also kind of fun. I'm worried what happens if we cut like Magda and then we have one less early creature for things like the Smuggler's Copter, or just getting on board with creatures for those times where you need to be able to be attacking or blocking. Because if we get rid of her, we have like a whole bunch of goblins that are in like the 1 power range, which is still good for crewing Smuggler's Copter. Not so good if I have to attack a random early Planeswalker or something. Ishra is a 2/1. Scrapwork Mutt's a 2/1. Because if Magda doesn't show up early and we got rid of a bunch of the other treasure makers, like it's a lot harder for her to tutor an artifact now. Yeah, we can probably lose Magda. The only way we have to tap her, aside from turning her sideways, is the copter. Like, we don't have any other vehicles for her to crew. So, I think we can probably afford to lose Magda. Maybe Trading Post. Trading Post keeps coming up, so I'm probably going to wind up cutting it. The problem is that it's doing enough different things that are all good that it might still have a slot on the deck. Like, the discarding a card is bad. Just gaining the 4 or 5 life or whatever it is. I think it's 4 life. Um, like, at that point, I really desperately need to get the card into the graveyard first. Like, that has to be so important that I don't even care that I'm discarding it for nothing. But it does let you discard to for an effect. And then it's the other effects, like being able to sacrifice one of our creatures to get back an artifact is helpful. Getting back the artifact is helpful. Drawing the card when sacrificing an artifact is helpful because both of them let me put cards that I brought back with Daretti back into my graveyard to bring back with Daretti again. And that is something. We only have one other sacrifice outlet in the deck right now, and it's the Kark Clan Ironworks. So I think I do want to keep Trading Post if I can find other stuff to get rid of before it. Alright, we've hit the 50-minute mark, and I am starting to slow down with my selection, so I think we just bump Crucible and Magda for right now. Get it down to 75, and try and get the last 15 cards tomorrow before we start drafting, hopefully. So yeah, I think I call it there for right now. So we'll pick back up next time. We'll try and get the last 15 cards off the list, figure out the mana base if I can. Then later on we'll be drafting. There's the Chromatic Cube has come back out, so we'll be doing that for a little while. And we still have Baldur's Gate on Friday. So me, my brother, and my brother's friend are doing what is my first playthrough through the game. So that's been fun. So we've got all that to look forward to. But yeah, I'm going to call it there for right now. So thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Have a good rest of your day.